Hi everyone, hello and welcome to the Knowledge Panel, episode 10, SEO for Startups. And I'm really pleased to say that the panel I've got today, I think, is ideal for this particular topic, SEO for Startups, because we've got three really quite well-known challenger brands that have disrupted their industry sectors since they've come into the world, and so having SEO managers from those businesses are absolutely great. So we're going to dive in and ask these people to introduce themselves, and start with. I'm just going to prove, guys, that I can pronounce names, and then you can laugh at me when I can't pronounce them. So we have Hellen Benavides, Fabrizio Ballarini, and Kerstin Reichert. And if I've got those right, you can, if I've got those wrong, you can laugh at me. But why don't you guys introduce yourselves? So Hellen, who are you, and where do you come from?
Well, I am a SEO manager for giffgaff. I've been working for giffgaff for the last 7 years. So pretty much since the start, always on content, and now a natural move to SEO.
And if there are people out there in markets that don't know giffgaff, it's disrupt a brand in the telephone, so basically a mobile phone provider, and completely disrupted the market with non-long-term contracts. I think is a fair bit. So, Fabrizio, who are you and where do you come from, sir?
Well, I'm obviously Italian, right? I don't have many options with such a name, and I work at Wise. I've been at Wise for the past 6 years, and I joined as the first SEO-ish to be in the team. So I've been seeing a lot of things happening from where we just launched the website to where we are today. So and I'm still doing that to some extent. So that's my role.
And for those who don't know Wise,
exactly,
are you allowed to say what it used to be called, or are you banned from saying that now?
Actually, I'm forcing myself, or like trying to not call it TransferWise, very hard, because obviously I have 6 years worth of history on this. Yeah, like we just rebranded like a few months ago from TransferWise to Wise, and that's why these days we're Wise. But most of you probably know us as TransferWise, right?
And if you haven't used Wise, then if you want to transfer money between countries, I use it all the time, and we use it to pay people all around the world. It's fantastic. So it really disrupted the finance FX industry, I'd say. And Kerstin, who are you and where do you come from?
Hello everyone, I'm Kerstin. I am originally from Germany, but I'm in the UK now, and I work at Tide as the senior SEO manager, or basically as the SEO department. I've been there for a little over 2 years. That's mainly where the SEO journey started. So I'm really excited to be there and see what else is going to happen with the company, as we're fairly new still.
Yeah, and I've got at least 2 Tide accounts as well. So I use if you want a bank account, and particularly if you're from abroad trying to get a bank account in the UK. The interesting thing about Tide is they kind of have really taken prepaid credit cards to its extreme. I'd say is not quite fully FCS regulated yet, but pretty darn close. And the apps and stuff are really easy to use. So definitely a big disruptor in the market. So thank you very much for coming on, guys. Your big successes in the startup world, I would say, for most of us that are startups, we can only dream of being, a Tide or a giffgaff or a Wise. So I want to start with really the basic question. What are the big SEO challenges associated with startups in general? What things do you think problems startups face that other businesses that have been around for a long time don't face? So I don't know who wants to head that one off. I'll pick on someone then. Fabrizio.
I can start. I think that
or even Fabrizio. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Usually people call me Fab, so at the third letter you get it.
I will do that now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the general problem that is common among all startups, whether you're a super well-funded company or whether you're like a company that you start in your bedroom, is time, right? And this is the time in both sense of figuring out what to do first and what to prioritize, and second is time to the clock ticking, your business becoming an actual business. And I think like that's definitely the thing that we, even though in our case, when we launched the SEO program, the company was already 5 years in, right, into the business. We already had like funding, yet you still have limited time, and I think that's generally the biggest problem, as in figuring out what to do first, how to measure it, and like how to pick up from there. Because differently, I guess, from like established brands, there's a little bit less luxury of what you can try and wait, right? It's okay if in an established brand, if for a couple of quarters things don't move. If you are in a fast-moving startup, it's unlikely that it's okay that you spend like months without not much happening, right? So I think this is definitely the biggest challenge. Even though from a resource perspective, you tend to be a bit more agile, right? Like and like is a bit faster to get things done, but then time and people, right, which you don't have to begin with, is definitely the hardest thing to fix.
So balancing resource and focus, to sum that up, is, you think?
Exactly. Even though you have unlimited money, I don't think that can fix it either, in a way that it takes time to hire the right people, to find them, convince them to join. Early days, to convince someone to actually join us, to come and build a team with us, was not an easy thing to do. So like the second person that I hired was like an ex-colleague, which I texted on WhatsApp. And then from there, I had to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn telling people, we are TransferWise, this is what we do. Would you like to join us? This is how we work. And as opposed to, people wanting to join other brands, that is a bit easier to understand what the company is about, is a bit less risky as well. So I think that's definitely important. Yeah.
Cool. Hellen, Kerstin, any other challenges for startups, with small startups?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we're still not in like super early stages, but still early stages. So I agree with Fab there that time is a massive constraint, because there's so much you can do, which is also a good thing, because you can be, very creative and basically whatever you want to do, people will trust you and you can do it. So there's a lot of scope, but that also means you really, really have to become very good at prioritizing. Things move incredibly fast. So yeah, definitely time. Then unfortunately, we don't have unlimited resources. Sounded great what Fab said there. I think in my case, it's slightly different. So I am quite limited in, other people's capacity that I need to get things done. And also budget-wise, of course, we are well funded and there is budget to go around. But I feel like being at a startup, it's just, you really have to squeeze as much as possible out of every single pound that you spend. Whereas when I worked at bigger companies, that was not quite the case. I guess you had a bit more, flexibility in your budget.
I agree. Yeah, limited resources, limited budget, and competing priorities in the business, especially with SEO, are the challenges up to now. I would say the way the business can be different is how you are going to rank, at least on Google, on the how you can differentiate your business. This differential point will be the key to get some ranking and traffic, I believe, for startups.
So I think that brings naturally onto the next thing, is how the heck are we going to compete with Goliaths, like the Barclays or the Vodafone or whoever may be your competitor in your world. If you're a startup, by definition, there's probably going to be an incumbent or many in there that are going to be hugely more powerful. So how do you go about making that differentiation? How do you pitch your business so that it is different to other people, so you've got some chance in SEO at all? Is that done by you guys, or is that fed down from top brass, or because a lot of us as SEOs don't necessarily have a top brass. We are the SEO. We are the CEO.
Yeah, I think I can probably go again. I think it's definitely a challenge when we first look at one of our direct competitor. They had the equivalent of links as Wikipedia, probably. So it's probably not a good strategy to try to build a couple of links and figure out how you can beat them, right? And but at the same time, over time, your profile grows and things happen. So on this point, I was watching it was an interview somewhere from Kevin Indig a while ago, and he was mentioning it wasn't necessarily related to startups, but I think on this is very important not to take the same approach, like for like in every company, right? So if you're working in a startup that is building Facebook V2 or Booking V2, probably you just need to focus on getting the technical things right, and then the product will scale pages and content and everything, right? If you're working on a startup where there's no actual front-facing product that get indexed and get searched, probably you have challenge in building landing pages, content, and or maybe do a blog on long-form content. I think different businesses, they got different challenges, and I think the most important bit, that's what eventually we decided early days, is not to try to outlink these people, because it was not possible on day one. Even though we are, relatively popular startup, we got a lot of press coverage. We are at some point when we first launched, we had a lot of coverage, really a lot of coverage, but it was still nowhere near comparable to anything like that. And so I think in our case, we decided to, become a bigger brand by building a lot of content and pages and have that such presence that would allow you with time to gain authority. But then equally, not all startups, they mean to compete with massive site out there. Maybe we just focusing on a very narrow set of keywords, and then you want to take a slightly different approach. I think the important bit is not to do a by the book play where you say, okay, I do a bit of technical work, a bit of content, and a bit of links, and let's hope that next month I will do the same and it will go well, because I don't think it's likely that all these things can go well, because you don't have the team to do it. Your website is not an authoritative website to do all these things in one go. So I think that's the, biggest challenge if you want to face big brands. But we did manage to outrank some of them with time, right? So it's not impossible. It's just if you're relentlessly focusing, it's not impossible. It's just short term is right, that you have limited chances to compete, or maybe you should pick a fight, right, on just one area, right?
Hellen and Kerstin, any other ideas for differentiation?
I do think, not on differentiation, but I do think in some things you need to go by the book to start with. For example, the technical part of the website, to get it right, to build the website on good technical foundations, to be able to scale, to grow, and take into account that your website in some years won't be a mess. So this, I think it's important to get right from the start, and then it's the differential parts of the business, creating quality content comparing to all the other big brands. This will also help.
Yeah, I think also it's not necessarily just the big brands or your direct competitors, right? Because from a business point of view, you might have your top 3, top 5 set competitors, but from an SEO point of view, you actually have a lot more competitors, because you're competing for different areas, you're competing with content, not only with your core product. And so I think it's crucial that you don't I guess try to mimic what everyone else is doing. Just focus on what you're really, really good at, and do that very well. And then, again, it's short term is difficult, but you have to build it over time.
If I could add 1 second from Ellen's point, picking the right technical setup to begin with is really crucial in future. I was thinking now, we changed domain 5-6 years into this. If when I joined, we wouldn't have got the right folder structure or a bunch of these things that we would have had to change at some point, and then change domain. And I think some choices, I think you have to remember that you have to stick them on the wall for a long time,
Exactly.
right? And you don't want to keep changing them, right? Or at least, the longer they are out and they're wrong, the painful they're gonna get, right, with time.
Exactly.
So I think some of these things definitely you don't have to forget them, because when I first joined, someone was about to launch countries on subdomains, and have a very weird structure that I had to stop on my first week. So like sometimes you have to make these calls and like not be popular, but it's important, right? Because long term you don't wanna go down that path, right? Maybe.
If possible, to start with the right technical foundations. If you have resources and budget, I would advise to get the fundamentals correct. For example, we started with our no contract theme, was our only offer, and now the website grew, and we have phones and many other offers, and the website should be fit to follow this growth. This will be ideally the thing to do. Yeah.
I think from the point of view of well, yeah, so the technical bit really important, and if you haven't got the funds, I think WordPress is still a good place to start, really. Myself, I mean, I think a lot of businesses can do quite well with WordPress designed well. I know a lot of small businesses seem to be jumping over to Wix now as well. But if you're a small business, I'm not talking about you guys, because you guys have got online, parts that need to go sort of beyond the WordPress of this world. But WordPress still is a hot favorite amongst SEOs for sure as a technology, but it still needs to be set up right, and it still needs to be set up properly. So you can disagree as well. But I want going over to the product differentiation bit. I mean, the way that Inlinks did it was I mean, we're competing theoretically. You could say, well, we're going to compete with all of your favorite tools, guys. So all of the Ahrefs and the SEMrushes and all the other tools. But we had to kind of say, well, I'm not going to do that. So entity SEO was our kind of approach, because that was what was different from our world, and trying to look at the world from a topic point of view instead of from a keyword point of view. And it's we're kind of getting there now, So entity SEO as a concept is becoming more well known, and then we're in a much smaller field, and I rather my chances trying to get to the top for entity SEO than anything that SEMrush is going to fight me with, because they're big. They've just gone public, so I think they made it. Okay, guys. So getting that technical stuff, it's great. What else can we do to differentiate ourselves from the competition? What about local stuff? Is that a way for a bricks and mortar business, perhaps not one of you like yourselves, but how can we use Google Local or Local Business, Google My Business, those kind of things? Does that help a small business stand out? And how do we set ourselves up on that path? Fabrizio, do you want to jump in again?
Yeah. We don't have physical branches, right? We don't have shops, right? But we do have offices, right, where our partners and other people come to. Another bit that when people think local, one part probably, if you have a physical business, definitely there is the Google My Business part that you can spend time on. The other bit that it's very easy to scale and is relatively low in terms of resources is to think about local within your product, right, and figuring out even within your website which local variants of your product exist, if they exist. I guess in our case we deal with currencies between countries, but even in that situation we have banks with the branch and codes and a lot of different setup that are still suited to having local landing pages, right? So it's not just about, on one side you have the My Business part, but on the other side is the local when it comes to more tailored content or landing pages that your customer might be looking at, which is very simple to iterate on, because the day you find that this type of article works in one city, right, to convert customer, is likely that it's going to work in another city. The only difference, you're going to reuse the same brief, the same template, the same setup. You're just going to tailor the content, right, and customize maybe the offering, right, for that particular city.
For giffgaff, we have a similar story. We don't have physical stores, but we have our themes offered in partners, and we are yeah, we are just starting to test local searches because we now have a partnership with O2 in some stores in North England, Northwest England. You will be able to find giffgaff sims. So we are starting to try out this local search, and yeah, it will be live soon. So I'll then be able to let you know if it's we are driving a footpath to the stores with local search.
I think that sounds an absolutely brilliant approach, Hellen. Actually, in that, you know, even though you've got distribution outlets, so basically anywhere that sells your sims, you could probably set up as a giffgaff distributor or a giffgaff reseller, and effectively run all of their local marketing. And so you go onto Google theoretically, and you know, giffgaff distributors, it suddenly shows everybody that's selling a giffgaff sim. So potentially could be a really, really powerful way of doing that, I would guess. So yeah, I like that idea.
Just to clarify, sorry.
No, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, just to clarify why on O2 stores is because we run on O2 network. That's why the partnership.
I understand.
Sometimes
go on.
Sorry, you could be even a bit brave and do local stuff if your competitor has got stores, right? Like you don't necessarily have to be local yourself, but if everyone is using a competing service in store, and you want to offer them like a web-only experience, you can still build like landing pages for your competitor. Obviously, it requires a bunch of legal trickery in between, but it's not impossible. Obviously you're not going to open Google My Business for them, right? But you can still try to challenge them on your. And often, like we realize that apart from like a small percentage of user, majority of the user, if you are disrupting a business, they are with someone else already. So you often have this challenge of trying to like touch on their brand traffic as well, to figure out, to promote your brand, or even to let them know that you are an alternative, right?
Yeah, good.
Okay, so we've got a question popped up there. I wonder if we can get that question back on the screen again as well. And if anybody has any questions, by the way, whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook, hopefully someone's looking out for the questions on Facebook as well, and we can get those up as well. But Mario says, maybe basic. There's no such thing as a basic question, but how does this local geo SEO work? Okay, so anyone want to jump in that? How does local geo SEO work? Or do you want me to do it?
Up to you.
All right. Well, that's okay. So
there was actually a John Muller Hangout article a while ago, and they were talking about event companies having landing pages for local like cities, right? And I think when it comes to having these approaches is often down to the content of these pages and their uniqueness, right? And whether you can offer a different proposition in one place or another. If you only have one event nationwide, you cannot build a page for every city because it's the same content, it's the same page. But there are companies that have different proposition or different tailored version of the same experience by city or by geographic area, and that where you can without having the exactly same page, you can offer a slightly more tailored intent. And it can work, yeah.
And I think the interesting thing about local is that the Google is much better at often is better at understanding where the user is that's doing the search than they are at understanding where the business is at the other end of the thing. So when I type in pizza nearby, that's kind of where you're starting to get to local. Google understands it's a local search and has a pretty good idea where, especially if it's on a mobile phone, where the user is at that particular point. The question then is, if you're a pizza company, should your results appear or not? And so, if you're lucky enough to be able to have used Google My Business and you have a lot of stores, if you're a PC World, you've got lots and lots of stores around the place, so you can find or Pizza Hut, then it'll show you the local Pizza Huts. If you're one Pizza Hut, you've got to compete against that. And that's where Google My Business comes in, because you can just sign up at Google My Business, which is free, and get yourself at least in your local results pack, or the local search pack in SEO, to try and answer Mario's question there, I think. So, okay, Kerstin, I've left you out the loop for a little bit. So let me jump in. What are some of the common mistakes that you think startups make? Where do they go wrong? Or perhaps, yes, go on.
Well, I think probably not prioritizing right. So sort of what I said earlier, it's very, very easy to get distracted and to get overwhelmed, because you have huge competition, it's a very competitive space. So I think not getting distracted and really trying to focus on your strength and where you can compete, and then prioritize and not try to do everything at once. So really focus on where you do have the best chances, and just focus.
And how do you think SEO and PPC should balance themselves out, particularly in the early days of a startup? Should people be using PPC or just exclusively SEO, or because PPC, of course, costs money right out the box? So can people use PPC to enforce to improve their SEO and vice versa? As Mara says, should they be working together?
Yeah, I think it depends probably on your business, but short term, of course, PPC works straight away, right? So SEO, you have to you have to build it over time. So if you have the budget, definitely go in with PPC, and then balance it over time. You will hopefully get into a position where you can start testing and see, where are you getting stronger and stronger with SEO. But in our case, we rely heavily on PPC. It's just very, very fast and shows good results. So if you have the budget, I would definitely use PPC as well.
Fabrizio?
Also the other bit is for testing purposes, right? It takes a lot of time and pain to build content and test landing pages. If you can test them pretty quickly with ads, often you're on the right track, right? And it can accelerate a bit your process of figuring out where to focus, even on search, if your product goes against established search demand. The challenge that we had, for instance, in our industry, is that being a disruptive new service, people don't Google a lot. The classic transactional stuff that you would do PPC on, right? So there are people searching money transfer and those kind of terms, but it's not a lot, right? We're not going to build such a big business just waiting for people to Google a bit more of that transactional stuff. So in some situations, it's not so helpful to look at paid search, because there's not enough demand from consumer against your product, and that's where you have to work with more longer tail queries, or like different intents that you wouldn't necessarily bid on, right? With paid,
but there is the temptation, I think, for the startups, because when you pay, you get it. The temptation of forgetting, leaving SEO to the second plan, because it's easier to get to sell your product through PPC than working on your website structure and user journey to get more traffic. So it needs to have a balance.
Yeah, that's true. You might get hooked on the quick turnaround. It could be tempting.
Wins or long-term wins.
Back to mistakes. I sometimes spend time with very early stage funders and that are starting literally companies, and the hardest part is probably to set the expectation of what you're doing within SEO, and when they have like a few options within channels that they want to test, they really need to understand really well that in a month they will not break the bank by doing SEO, right? They need to understand how they're going to invest, how they're going to sit within the landscape. And otherwise they just get burned, and then they lose confidence that this is going to work, right? And obviously not everyone has got the benefit of like spending a lot of resources and time to begin with, but I think the easiest mistake is to compare this to the other channels. After a few months, there's no results, and then you just turn it off or just don't hire a team that set up an SEO program well, and then you just think that it doesn't work, right? And that's very easy, especially when your company is well funded, to just spend money, right? Like many well-funded companies, they burn a lot of money for that reason, right? And,
I see a lot of these expectations with digital PR. I don't know. I would be interested in knowing from you guys, but it's a lot of investment, and sometimes we just get no followed links. I think this is the trend now, and this is a bit concerning, because there is these expectations in increase the website authority, and it's something that to pay attention when you invest in digital PR for external linking.
Yeah, I think that external link bit is an interesting challenge for a startup, but also it's a great opportunity, because you are a disruptive business. You have that opportunity to cut through the story. Barclays going out there and trying to get more links are going to be just the same kind of links as before, unless they've got the same ability to come up with a brand new story or a brand new angle, but do they necessarily want to, because they're taking a punt on changing their existing business base, whereas you guys have got 3 very different disruptive businesses in your area, and I think Fabrizio mentioned it. I think using PPC to as a testing tool to work out what your SEO strategy might be a very, very good idea, and I think that's an excellent approach. But you all had the problem of starting out with phrases, I suppose, key phrases that no one might want to search for, that no one's searching. So no contract telephones, or banking without a branch, or transferring money. All of those 3 things, or transferring money cheaply or whatever, all of those 3 things are things that, were not necessarily, there was no obvious phrase that was being used by people in large numbers, certainly not enough to justify the massive expansion, the rapid expansion of your businesses. So, obviously, that the business is not solely based around SEO, but how did you guys, get into, how did those businesses become big enough to have SEO managers like yourselves if there wasn't enough phrase? So an innovative business might start out with a product that has no search phrase at all, brand new product. This is the first one that's ever, rains from the stars on a blue summery night, or I don't know, whatever it may be, and it's called a thingamabob, and no one's searching for it. How did you expand that marketplace to get enough terms to warrant SEO, organic search traffic? Who wants to go in that?
We have a ton of these challenges, actually. That's pretty much the bread and butter of what we do, as in there was actually not much demand to bank on to begin with. And then equally, when it comes to things like links, obviously you get a bit more coverage, right? Because you're also a bit more brave, right? Barclays, the CEO, didn't get naked at any point in time soon, but our CEOs many years ago, they got naked, right? And that makes PR right on the street, and that makes little PR. So there are areas where I guess you are a bit more flexible, but equally area where you don't have search demand, and that's where I guess the tricky part is to have confidence by talking to your customers that sooner or later investing in one area that is not necessarily that close to what they meant to do is okay, right? We even write content for people that might use our product 12 months down the line, right? And we still do it if we think that is a good investment within a certain investment appetite, just because it's better than solely relying on these people trying to search for something. The other bit that I think SEO can really fix is that your product needs to be good enough, and that there needs to be enough word of mouth and enough happy customers that they will tell someone else, right? And the same reason why I don't think that neither PR can fix that, right? If you got a boring company with a bad product, no matter how much PR you do, you're still not going to fix that easily, right? It's very difficult to get journalists to buy into your stuff. So I think that one sometimes is a bit of a function of how good is your product to some extent, up to the point that at some point it justify and there's enough growth and there's enough spin to invest in building an SEO team, right? We started like an SEO team when we already had 1 million customers, right? Like, so we weren't like necessarily just a startup. Obviously, it's not the same for everyone, right? There are people that start with a bit less customers than that, but there are like points at which I think is important to realize, okay, this product is sticking, and therefore I'm going to invest in something long term, which on the long run it proves to be the best channel that we have, right? We pay back the investment in SEO like 10 times faster than all the other channel. Is growing the fastest. Is getting more and more share within marketing. It's a good idea, but it just takes a bit of confidence and gut if you have a decent product that you can build upon. Otherwise, the risk is that you're going to try to fix with SEO all the other problem that your product has got and your company has got, and that is very hard to do, right? Like, it's not super simple. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I agree. Word of mouth is key for this. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if you don't have the right product, then SEO certainly can't fix that. But if there is not much search demand about your actual product or your product term, you can always think about, what is the need that people have, and then try to think along the whole funnel rather than at the end point where you have your product and then get to it that way. So basically build your topic universe around that and start very early.
So I mean, on that, Fabrizio said they actually had 1 million customers before they set up an SEO team. Kerstin, how many business accounts did Tide have before you set up an SEO team? You don't have to answer. You may be not allowed to answer, even if you knew.
Very little. I can tell you that.
Oh, you have very few. Okay, all right. Okay.
Yes, very few customers. So definitely grown a lot since then.
But would you say Tide organic traffic has been a big source of new accounts for Tide?
Yes,
or did that come later? Was that right near the start then?
Well, so it did take a while to build up, right? So like I said before, we balanced out quite a lot with paid channels, with PPC, because our, I guess, issue is not that there was no search demand for business accounts, because there is demand for that. It's more, attracting the right people that are willing to have their account digitally and maybe don't need a branch. But that's also depending on how you position yourself, right? Because it doesn't have to be a primary account. If you still need a branch that you walk into, you can keep your existing account and use this as your digital platform to do all your other business finance. But yeah, growing the customer base, organic, definitely played a big part in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, sorry, Hellen, anyone want to jump in? Or I mean, how many? giffgaff must. Did you have loads and loads of customers before you became had an SEO role, or do you think giffgaff also started organically?
We started organic really well, also because of branded searches. So
okay.
Our activation base is a lot of branded searches, so it's organic but branded. On the generic, generic is always the challenge to grow in this area.
Of course. So you got people to talk about giffgaff then. So word of mouth was a big part of your strategy, and that fed towards your organic. So exactly. Which makes absolute sense. So this word of mouth, getting your customers to talk about it, even if they're not your customers yet, is key, I think, to SEO for a startup. I think it's a magic way. You've got to get your customers to be your salespeople, because you can't afford to do it yourself.
Before we launched giffgaff, we already had the community. So word of mouth first, and then PR, good PR, branding, and the differential of giffgaff. They all helped a lot with search.
So I wanted to finish up with, we haven't got very much time left already, but how much does it help if the business has either a flamboyant CEO or a knowledge leader CEO, or not necessarily the CEO, but how important is it to a startup to have people in that organization who are already either respected or hated. It doesn't matter which necessarily from a marketing point of view. But they can then create that focus around the sort of the links and the comments you mentioned, your CEO dressing up naked, but has all of your businesses got somebody in the organization that within their industry sector is seen as a knowledge leader and somebody that's respected in the field? And do you use them, or would you be worried as a startup that those people then might be too valuable for the business and too valuable for the business to risk as a main plank? Can I go at Kerstin for that? Have you got anybody in the organization that you use as a content piece, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say it definitely helps. But if you don't have that person, or if your CEO happens to not want to be out there all that much, I think that's okay as well. But yeah, it definitely helps if you have someone who's well known in the industry, if you have someone who has proven thought leadership, and you can work with that person for your content or PR campaigns and things like that. So I think it's definitely beneficial. But I think also, it doesn't necessarily only have to be the CEO. If you have more people in your company, definitely also use them as authorities to speak about certain topics and work with them for PR, content creation and things like that. So yeah, I would not only think about the CEO, or just generally who is there that is a thought leader and can contribute to this different areas of your work.
Hellen, you got anybody in your organization that stands out as a thought leader in your sector?
Oh yes, yes, I do have, and I try to build up the SEO advocates within the business. So this influence to get everyone on board with SEO is a very good point for companies that are not only starting up but on the growth path.
Guys, we're nearly to the end of the time. I just want to finish up with one last question, because it leads into our next presentation next month, which I'll bring David in for after that. What is it that is there something that big organizations do that small organizations should not attempt to do, that startups should not attempt to do? Where is is there something in the world of big organizations that they can do things and leverage that smaller businesses are unable to do? I've got internal link building comes to mind as a thing. They've just got so much more content that they can start leveraging that. But any other thoughts in there, or
I think that in terms of not doing is probably even on not doing structural mistakes in the setup of the teams, right? And then sometimes it's not necessarily a good idea to look how some of these big organizations are built in terms of team and structure and how they operate. And I think these are really important, because you have one chance to build a team structure that is going to scale, and this would make people happy to come every day to work, rather than complaining about developer not shipping, technical changes, about the content team not doing things. So it's probably your one-off chance to get the ground right. And back to the probably leaders question as well. I think in our case, it's more than having leaders that are authority in the space. It's probably more useful that leader trust the teams to invest and have the right measurement in place. Otherwise, the risk is that you end up in a very large organization where you have someone making a decision on which keyword you should rank for, right? And this person does not understand much about search, right? So you shouldn't make sure that you don't get to that point, right? And the decision maker, the team in terms of resources, the engineers, everyone is within your team, or at least you have some control of it in a smooth way. Otherwise, the bigger it gets, the more painful it gets, up to the point that you have large organization with SEO teams that are completely enabled to move things because it's blocked by a bunch of people. And luckily, when you're a new company, you don't have this issue because a lot of these people don't exist yet, right? So you can work hard in not making sure that they don't work in that fashion. I think for us it's really important because we went from when we started the program, we were like a million customers. Now we have around 10 million ish. And then we went from like myself and 3 engineers to now 50 plus people that work around SEO alone. And then in that situation if the bigger you get, the harder it gets. It's not gonna work really well with time. Yeah.
Okay. I also quickly saw that one. That's a good question to end up on. As sales flags, that question came up there. So let's say you've only got one thing you want to focus on first, because the 3 experts here today have said, focusing is a really good thing to do. We don't waste our resources because we can't afford to waste our resources. So Sales Flags has come up with 3 really good ways to start developing your SEO. Link building, just go and get links to your site, versus writing that killer content, web page content, versus writing a killer PDF, an ebook, which is the best for an early stage. Okay, what's your opinions? Where would you go out of those 3 if you were going to focus? You're not allowed to say all 3 now because you said focus.
I would go for a pillar page, having not only one, your key pages. The thing that startups can do that big ones cannot do because they are too big is take care, pay attention in each journey, in each page content, to build it as good as possible, because Google is Google is the most picky user you can have, the most smart user. And if your page is relevant for Google, it's good enough for Google, it's good enough for the user. So you need to make sure your journeys are slick.
Okay, cool. Kerstin?
Well, it's a very, very hard question. It depends on your competitors and what you're starting out with. So I'm slightly torn to pick one. I sort of agree on strong pages, but if I want to maybe collect leads very quickly, if I want to turn people interested into customers, I might even go with a PDF. It depends on my resources that I have. But yeah, it depends what is my situation that I'm starting with, and what's the objective. So I'm leaning towards a PDF to promote, to get leads very early on that I can then market to later on.
Yeah, okay, good as a lead gen. Okay, good. Fabrizio, what do you want to go for?
I mean, you could do lead gen anyway, regardless of the other 2 eventually. But if I have to choose between building links and building pages, always pages, right? Like you can build all the links you want, but if you don't have the pages, there's no fun happening, right? So I think I would start there first, and then at some point, if the pages don't rank, maybe links are a problem. But at least you should build the pages first, and then see what happens. Yeah.
I think I kind of agree that I think the page building doing the killer page first allows you. I mean, you could then create an ebook out of that pillar page as well. So that's okay. Exactly. Obviously, if they can read it without downloading the book, then you've lost the lead, maybe. But so, Kerstin, you do have a fair point. But also, regardless, those are what if that pillar content is good, that will generate the links. If it's genuinely good content, knowledge leadership content, so that's good.
I think maybe.
Yep.
Sorry,
yep.
No, I just meant to say because we've been talking about SEO and SEO only, but maybe especially for startups that don't have all the resources, I think it's very important to see SEO not as something that works in silo, and always try to work across teams and make the most out of all the channels and work together.
And I think I can't remember his name, a guy the SEO for LinkedIn for ages, he used PDFs almost exclusively as his SEO building tool. And you think LinkedIn, blimey, it's LinkedIn. But, he definitely used the PDF approach very, very effectively to generate leads and generate links, which, effectively still led to reasonably pillar page content, which did the whole thing. So I guess it is where you are in your journey, and whether what can stand out most is probably a good answer. Guys, thank you ever so much for your time. David, what have we got on next time? So
next time we're going to be broadcasting live on Monday the 17th of May at 4 p.m. UK time. We're going to be zeroing in on SEO for big brands. We've already got Turgi Akar from Sony going to be appearing on that one. A couple of other people that we're still talking to about appearing in that one. But make sure you sign up at theknowledgepanelshow.com so you can watch us live. We broadcast live on YouTube, on Facebook as well. And of course, we're available as a podcast to catch the replays on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
So, guys, thank you very much. It just leaves me to say thanks ever so much for coming along today. If anybody wants to contact you guys, are they allowed to? What's your Twitter handle? How can they get hold of you, Hellen?
Hellen, LinkedIn. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's the best way.
Kerstin?
Given the name easiest LinkedIn, my handle is a bit strange, so LinkedIn, yeah.
Okay. And Fabrizio, can we find you?
Yes, same. Google my name or on like Twitter. My handle is Patchnut, but yeah, probably Googling me is quicker.
Patchnut. How do you spell that?
P-E-C-H-N-E-T is my video game nickname, so it's got nothing to do with everything, but I still keep it. Yeah, just being lazy.
Guys, thank you ever so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate it. Your experience has been invaluable, and so have the tips. So, see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.